Hey guys, how's it going? Before we get into the video, I want to clarify it right now. This is not a riding lawnmower, this is a garden tractor. If you want to know the differences between lawnmower and garden tractor, I have a video on that already. I just want to get that out of the way right now. The tractor I am filming today is a garden tractor, not a riding lawnmower. Anyway, now that we're off of that topic, I figured I'd make a video today going over what to look for. This is kind of aimed at the person buying their first house or renting their first house, or just that person that's always used a push mower their entire life and decided, I want to go get myself a riding lawnmower. Just kind of things to look for on them. They all range just about the same, the things to look for. There are gear drives and there are hydrostatics. As far as I know, that's the only options there are. I don't know about the riding lawnmower world. If I had a riding lawnmower to film, I would, but I don't have a riding lawnmower, so oh well. Nothing wrong with that. They're pieces of shit anyway, especially the ones from Lowe's. So today I figured I'd go over things to buy or look for when you're buying your first one. One of the things to look for, this is for if you're buying one used, actually buying new ones as well. I've heard horror stories from people when they went to buy a new one from Lowe's or Home Depot, the box store companies. They're not exactly the greatest. Even some of the dealerships, I've heard horror stories. One of the things to check is check your tire pressure. You don't want them to be too full, but you don't want them to be flat. These tires are good. They have a little bit of give to them, but they are kind of stiff as well. That's a good tire. That's a good tire. You want to inspect your tires, look for cracks. This tire's got some cracks in it, but this is old, and this is actually a factory tire, so I'm going to hang on to it. Check your front tires as well, make sure there's no cracks. You can see there are some cracks in my tires, but like I said before, these are the factory. Not to this tractor, but they are the factory tire tread that you would get. So that is the only reason that I still have them. Check for leaks. Usually sometimes when you get one, somebody will move it from the spot that it's always been sitting, or they'll put air in the tires when you first get there. That way it looks like they hold air. Check around, listen for air leaks, listen for hissing from the tires, and also look around the tractor for leaks. You can see mine doesn't have any leaks underneath of it. Come around to the rear end of it. Look underneath of it for leaks. One way to tell how one was taken care of is how clean is it, how does it look? Does it look like it's been washed? I know a lot of people that don't wash theirs, they don't do anything to them. All they do is mow and then put them away. And you can tell how someone treated it before you, depending on, how it looks, like I said. Just kind of go over it and look, check out the deck, look at the mower deck on it, look and see how it looks, if it's all rotted out. Here's one right here. Take a look at the deck, just kind of look at it and see how rusted it is. Look if it's got any rust holes in it. Inspect your belt. Make sure your belt still looks good, That belt looks pretty good. Check this belt too. Make sure your belt on the deck looks good. Usually on the riding lawnmowers, if I'm correct, there's only one belt. Usually that one belt goes around the deck and up to the engine. I don't know if that is correct or not. Like I said, I don't work on lawnmowers. Go around it, look around. Usually there's grease fittings. Some of the newer ones nowadays don't have grease fittings. Just go around and take a look at them and see if they've been greased or not. Make sure that whoever had it before you took good care of it and greased it. Come up here, Put both of your front tires straight. You want both of them in a straight line like that. Come up here, look at it, look and see if they're aligned. These tires are pretty well aligned. That one over there kind of turns in where that one is just about straight. It is noticeable, but it's not terrible. Come around to the back. Look and see if your axle's bent. Look and see if one of your tires are leaning. If your tire is leaning, your axle bearing might be out. If it's not, or maybe your tire could even be loose. Come around to your tire. I know most of the new ones don't use lug bolts. If you have lug bolts, look at all your bolts, make sure they're all tight. I know all mine are tight. Look in there, make sure you still have a snap ring if yours has a snap ring. Come over to the other side, check it as well, make sure your snap ring's there, make sure all your bolts are there. Go over it, check your drive belt. Usually there's a drive belt on yours. I don't know if you can see it in there. Just kind of go around it. Turn the key switch, make sure the key switch turns. Make sure the key switch is off when you look at it. If you look at it and the key switch is on and it's an older unit, do not buy it. Usually, if the key switch is left on, the battery is going to be dead. And usually if the key switch is left on for long periods of time. If it's an older unit, such as this, even if you're looking at a garden tractor, if it's an older unit and your key switch is on, you'll more than likely need a new coil. You can't really find any good coils nowadays. If you leave them on like that, the coil will burn up. The bottom of it will melt, and all the guts and internals will fall out. So that's one that I'd walk away from, or I'd try to lower the price on. Go over to your lift lever. Some of them have electric lift, some of them have manual and hydraulic. Lift it. Are you able to lift and lower it? How well does the deck lift and lower? How well does the lever move? Make sure you can lift it. Some of them do have helper springs on them, some of them don't. Come up here to your gear shift. Move your shifter, make sure your shifter moves. Put it in gear. Take it through all the gears. That's actually something to do when it's running, is take it through all of the gears and make sure it moves in all the gears. Some of them are manual PTO and some of them are electric PTO. This one here is an electric PTO. This is usually what you would look for on a manual PTO. All the manual PTO ones nowadays look just about like this, except for made a lot worse and a lot cheaper. Move your lever, make sure your lever moves nice. Light switch, make sure your light switch is good. Choke cable, usually the choke is attached to the throttle on all of them nowadays, and you throttle it up all the way to choke it. But if yours is like this, it's made correctly. Check it, make sure your choke moves nice, make sure your throttle moves nice. That other lever right there, that's the variator. No new one has that I'm aware of, so I'm not going to show that. Come up here under the hood. Look it over, look at your wiring, make sure your wiring looks good. I know the wiring in this tractor is good because I rewired most of it, so therefore I know the wiring in this tractor is good. Go around, check all your connections, make sure all your connections are tight. Over here on the coil as well. Mine has a horn. Like I said, go over all the wiring and look at it, make sure you don't see any bare wires or anywhere it looks like it's burned. If you see somewhere bare wire or looks like it's been burned at one point, try to get the price lowered on it, because you're going to have to go through it and completely rewire it most situations. If you can get it at a lowered price, get it still. Or it's up to you, get it or don't get it. I personally wouldn't, because wiring sucks. Another thing, go around on it, make sure all your safeties If it still has the safeties in place, make sure all the safeties work. Usually I bypass all the safeties when I get them. Go in it. Check your oil. Make sure there is no gas in your oil. Make sure your oil is still good and clean. As you can see, my oil is kind of low, but all the dirt has settled to the bottom of my oil. There is still oil and it is still up at the full mark. Sometimes all the dirt settles down to the bottom. If you wipe the dipstick off, stick it back in, pull it out again and look at it, most of the time you'll be able to see where the actual level is, but mine, like I said, all the dirt's at the bottom of it. Go around it, like I said, look at all the wiring and everything, make sure all the wiring in it looks good. I'll come up here. Most of the time your engine will be vertical, mine is horizontal because like I said, this is an older machine and this is a garden tractor. Most of the time though, the engine will be horizontal. Take a look at your blower, blower housing where the flywheel spins. Look at it, make sure it's not all covered in grass. Check your air filter, make sure your air filter is not clogged up and covered in grass. I do that on here, but mine's a little bit harder to get to than it is on most of the newer ones, and I don't really want to pull the grill off to get to it. Just go over it. Make sure everything's tight. My hood wobbles a little bit, but that's just the mounts. Make sure everything on it's tight. You don't want to get on there and have something loose. Another thing you could do is turn the key on. Most of the lawn mowers, the engine has to be running in order to check your lights, and most of the riding lawn mowers don't have tail lights, I've noticed. But just kind of go around it and check all your headlights and check your tail lights, make sure your lights are all working. And then after you've done all the visual inspections, do this too. That click you just heard is my PTO. That is your electric clutch kicking in. If you hear that click, that means that your clutch is potentially working and working good, hopefully. If you don't hear that click, there are some clutches that are quiet and other ones that are loud, like that. If you don't hear it, don't be weary just yet. It might kick in when the engine's running, it might not. Another thing you could do, I guess, is go underneath of it and check your blades. Make sure your blades look good. Look underneath the deck, see how underneath the deck looks, make sure it looks clean. These blades are sharp. You want to push on them. If you push on them and it feels, like a sharp end, you don't want to cut yourself on them, but you just want to push on it and make sure it feels sharp. If it feels sharp, then it's usually good. Go around it, like I said, do a visual inspection. Turn the deck, make sure it spins nice, make sure all the pulleys spin. If you have a pulley that doesn't spin, usually it's a pain in the ass to get unstuck. You have to replace the bearing most times. Sometimes you get lucky and they'll wake up and start spinning again, other times they won't. Another thing you could do before you buy, I really wish that I had one that I could do this on, is turn the engine over by the flywheel and make sure the engine has good compression, make sure it turns over real nice. Do I have one that I could do that with? I don't think I, oh yes I do, in here. Here we go. Turn the engine over, make sure the motor turns over nice and has compression. Usually, if it fights against you like this one is, you can usually tell when they have compression and when they don't have compression. This is a hydrostatic tractor. When you go to the tractor, make sure the transmission's disengaged. Usually if you push on it and it fights you, if it's a hydrostatic, you can tell if it has a lever like this. Usually the lever will be somewhere here, somewhere on the dash, or here. Usually the disengage will be in the back plate. Pull it out or push it in to engage or disengage it. Sometimes they're up here to disengage and engage. They're all different, I guess. Check your hydrostatic oil. I don't know where the hydrostatic oil would be on an older hydro, but I know where it would be on mine. On mine, the hydro fluid is right there. Some of them you can check, some of them you can't. Most of the riding lawnmowers nowadays are sealed units, and you can't check the hydrostatic fluid in them, but the older ones you can. But I think most of them all are sealed units, and you can't check the fluid. So now, I think we're just about ready to start the machine up and listen to the engine and listen to how it runs. One of the things to listen for when you start the tractor, make sure the engine doesn't knock. You want to make sure your engine sounds good, has no knocks, no weird noises, no ticks. Sometimes a tick is okay when it first starts up. If it's an overhead valve unit, the oil has to take a second to get up to the valves, and usually once oil gets up to the valves it goes away, probably about 5 or so seconds. If the engine ticks, if it's a flathead, it's usually okay. There's nothing really to be alarmed about. My engine over there, all my engines have ticks. That's just the valve noise. You can adjust the valves to get it to go away. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I guess it also depends on how many hours are on the machine too. If you've got high hours on it, then yeah, it's going to tick a little bit. Also check your oil. Like I said before, make sure your oil looks good. Make sure it's full of oil. Sometimes engines over time will start burning oil. Usually they'll need rings replaced. If you replace the rings, they're fine. Or maybe sometimes, the oil's just been in there forever. They don't change their oil. And over time, it's just started burning the oil. So that's another thing you could do. Let me put you guys in my stand and I will start the machine up and let you guys listen to it. So now I'm going to start the tractor for you guys. Listen to the starter. Listen to how the starter runs, how the starter sounds. Usually a healthy starter sounds real good and this engine spins over real fast. This tractor actually has a wore out starter. It's not really wore out, but I need to clean it, so the starter is not going to sound very good. Usually you have to push the clutch down before you go to turn the key because there are safeties. And also pushing the clutch down takes a load off of the engine and will help the engine spin faster. So, that's wrong. Let me go on ahead and crank it up for you guys. Give it some choke. Usually it starts up easier, but I forgot to choke it. Listen to how it runs, let it warm up for a few minutes and see how it sounds as it sits there and runs. Let me get the 312 out of the way and we'll take it outside and I'll engage the mower deck for you. Here's actually an example of how a good starter would sound. This starter is a little bit better. It is kind of wore out too, but it does sound pretty good. And this is also a hydro unit, so I'll start it up and I'll move the hydro so you guys can watch, Another thing to check on your machine is check your brake. Make sure the brake on it's good. Usually the way to test that is to push on it and see how it acts, you know. If it doesn't want to move, usually that means your brake's good. As you can see, mine's good. My brake works. I've let the engine warm up for a while. Let me throttle it up real quick and we'll check that deck out. I'll let you listen to the deck. One thing I forgot, when you are looking at the deck, move your blades around, move them up and down, see if they move. If they move and you watch your pulley and your pulley moves as well, your bearings are bad. Your blades could be loose as well. So check that while you're under there looking at it. That's a good sounding deck right there, as you can see. Drive it around some with the deck on, make sure it can handle the load. And while you're there looking at it, if whoever is the one you're buying it off of is okay with it, take it out and mow it with it a little bit and see how it does. See how it mows. So there you guys go. I hope this video helps somebody out looking at their first riding lawnmower, or their first time buying one, I guess, just kind of looking it over, you know. So yeah. While I'm thinking about it, a couple of things that I forgot to mention in this video is sometimes you will run into some if they are older, have high hours on them, the engine will tend to smoke when you start it up. That's completely normal. Some of them smoke a little bit when they first start up. Some of them smoke a little bit because they burn a little bit of oil. When they first start up, other ones don't. Sometimes some engines do burn oil over the course of, I want to say probably after about, if they're higher hours, some don't have hour meters anymore, some do. I want to say maybe 600-700 hours, even 800 hours. Some of them start to burn oil around there. So if you've got one that's high hours, 500, 600, 700, 800 hours on it, maybe start checking your oil more often than you do. Also, if you're getting a brand new one, the engine has 0 hours on it, just kind of run it for a couple hours before you take it out and mow with it or do anything involving like that. Just run it for a few hours, and maybe 2 or 3 hours, and let the engine kind of get broken in. Because 0 hours on an engine, they're just about not even broken in yet. Let it run for a while, let the rings break in, and let everything get into play. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, like I said before, make sure that your engine, if it's, like I said, have 0 hours on it, let it get broken in, because usually an engine with 0 hours on it, the rings need to seat, and everything needs to get down where it needs to be. Operating temperature, once they get up to operating temperature for the first or second time, that'll help them out too. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, if you like what you see around me is what I usually work on all the time. I like to work on these old garden tractors. This is actually my newest. This is actually one of my newest ones. This is an 86. When I say newest, I mean one of the newest tractors I have. This is, when it comes to years, most of my stuff is from the 60s and 70s. This is a 1986. The one in second place is my 212 and 210 from 1985. So yeah, this is about one of the newest, like I said. And then there are the hydros. Like I said before, that over there is a hydro. Make sure if your hydro doesn't move, check it and make sure your hydro is still engaged. Some things as well to check for is make sure that all the belts are good, like I said, up underneath of it. Sometimes if they don't move, sometimes the belt needs tensioned or replaced, and other times your disengage might be on. I've had that before. And a tip of advice to you guys, after you use a certain type for a while, whether it's hydrostatic or gear drive, always remember to make sure that you study the new one well, or don't get too used to having a gear drive or hydrostatic. I've done that several times where I've jumped on one and went to look for the gear shifter or the clutch pedal and couldn't find it, as well as the hydro lever, and couldn't find it. So yeah, don't get attached. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. I guess this is going to be it. Take care. Bye.